Maybe you're just waking up, but maybe you feel like there's something different in the air on this Thursday from every other Thursday that you experience. That's because the madness intensifies on this Thursday. It is the round of 64 Thursday at the 2024 Men's NCAA Tournament, and we welcome you into hour number 2, live right here on the early line all across the SportsGrid network. That is SportsGrid. That is Donnie Rightside. I am Ben Stevens. We get you set for all 16 matchups, everything you need to know, all of the info, insight, and handicapping to make you ready for the big dance as it really gets underway on this Thursday. We will preview every game. We will give you thoughts on every game. We will still paint the path and a march through the madness for Final Four teams and Cinderellas that might make a run here in the month of March. It is the best day on the sports calendar, and we are glad to have you here into our second hour.
Yeah, exactly. And this is the way to do it, right? Getting the day started the right direction. Maybe you're waking up, having some coffee on your way to work, sitting in your cubicle, or even driving for Uber, truck drivers. We got you out there. We got you covered today.
Wow.
All across the board at the SportsGrid network. You do not want to not be tuned in all throughout the day. And by the way, your boy DRS, from the morning show to the radio to the night show, look, we got on here at 8 a.m. I'm going to be on for 8 hours live right here on the network. So maybe it's my network today. How about that, BWS?
Just so you know, I don't think your radio show is live because of other scheduling that we have here
it is.
At the network. You can continue. Maybe it is. Maybe. Is it actually?
Yeah. I asked that. Actually, this is me being proactive. I asked last week the higher-ups. Any changes next week will not affect you. So away we go in the afternoon. How about that?
I would maybe ask another question. Speaking of the radio, let's welcome in our SportsGrid radio audience here into hour number 2, live on this Thursday on the early line on SportsGrid. You're listening on Sirius XM, channel 159. All of our radio terrestrial affiliates now in the fold as well. I am Ben Stevens. He is Donnie Rightside. The reason I have questions about your radio lineup today is because of the great programming that we have here on SportsGrid. Our Bracket Central NCAA tournament coverage begins at noon Eastern all the way through 3 p.m. Eastern. And I believe Moneyline is from 2 to 3 p.m. Eastern. And I was told, because I also host a radio show from noon to 1, that we would not have usual radio programming, but something else on this Thursday, just so DRS is in the know.
I know. I'm looking. Look, you know what? I'm going to screenshot, see the behind-the-scenes stuff. I'm going to have the producers put it up on the screen, and maybe we can make a live phone call right here on the show to get things deciphered, because an hour in the afternoon might be a little bit nice here, but as I'm reading again, any changes, nothing that would affect you. There will be no Carver and Lisi on the days that we air the bracket special, but business as usual. So there you go. Your boy DRS is always showing up, though. Whether you need him or not, he's going to be here.
Interesting. Maybe he's just talking into oblivion. Maybe he's bringing you the news and notes on the money line. We'll continue to do our job here on the early line and preview some action in the NBA before we get back into the big dance. And our sports professor, Rick Horrow, joins us next. We have no idea what is he going to say. I can't wait to ask him about the trending story of the day, that being Shohei Ohtani. Anyway, we go to the NBA right now around the association. Big matchup tonight out in the Mile High City. The New York Knicks on a 4-game win streak on the road in Denver, but it's hard to beat the Nugs at altitude. 9.5-point spread in favor of Denver. Smaller total, just 207.5.
Yeah, and there's a reason being, because we're still waiting on the Knicks to come back. We thought we'd get OG Anunoby back, and now it's like, okay, going to need some more time at this point. So it's no surprise to me that this line roughly is double digits currently at the FanDuel Sportsbook at a 207.5. The one thing we do know is if Denver gets you down, they're not going to look to run and pick that pace up. They'll slow it down and be even more efficient. I actually like the under 207.5 in this game, but if I had to bet, it's one of those things yesterday. We thought that the Bucks could keep it close with the Celtics, and they did. I don't know if the Knicks can keep it close here on the road with the Nuggets shorthanded. So I think Denver Nuggets win this game going away, but also I think I like the total to the under, even though how low it is at 207.5. I think I like that there a little bit better than the side itself.
The Knicks have won 4 straight games. They have covered in 3 of the 4 with 1 push in the mix. Booked as a dog without OG Anunoby the other night. But when OG Anunoby has been in the lineup since he was acquired in early January, the Knicks have been great. Oh, by the way, they've played 30 games in 2024 in this calendar year. They have gone under in 23 of 30. Denver at home this year, as you would expect, very good. 27-6 straight up. Booked as the home favorite in 32 of those 33 games in the Mile High City, but just 15, 16, and 1 against the numbers. Speaking of good teams covering numbers, that is the Orlando Magic, the best covered team in all of the NBA. Now 46 and 23 ATS. Orlando is the only team in the association covering in more than 60% of their games. It's a 66.7% clip. Orlando at home tonight against the New Orleans Pelicans. Interesting game for both clubs in terms of their postseason positioning. New Orleans has won a bunch of games in a row, and they're actually laying 3, an updated number from 2.5. 3 points in favor of the Pels, even on the road against the best covered team in the NBA.
And the overnight number here was a -1 point favorite for the Pelicans, and it's now risen to 3 points here at the FanDuel Sportsbook. But how about this? An overnight number of 211 on the total, which is already low, dropped to 207 here. We don't have any major signs of any superstar players sitting out, but this also lets you know, you take a look at the match, they don't want to push you with all that much pace. They'll play some defense here, but as Ben said, they are number one, very good home team, number two, very good cover team. So I do appreciate that line went from -1 to -3, and quite frankly, probably a heavy public side is still going to be the Pelicans, but be weary of those Magic at home. I'll fall into the trap. I'll go with the public side on the Pelicans. I just think they're more talented, but it wouldn't be surprising if the Magic actually win. It's what they do in this spot.
Orlando has won 4 straight games. They are 22-19 against the spread as an underdog this year. The Magic, by the way, speaking of that total DRS, under in 10 of their last 13. Yeah. The Pels under in 5 of their last 6. They have won 3 straight. 7 of their last 8. New Orleans booked as a favorite in all 7 of those victories. They have covered in all 7 of those wins as well. A play-in looking game for a Houston Rockets team that's making things interesting out west. The Rockets have won 3 straight. They lay 3.5 at home today against Chicago. The Bulls pretty firmly into that 9 spot in the Eastern Conference.
Yeah, you know what? Trusting the line, right? Screaming, you better take the Bulls here. I can't believe the Bulls are getting points here. I'm going to go with the Houston Rockets here. Let's lay that 3.5 and see if we have some of that H-Town magic.
They've won 6 straight games. Still trail the Dubs for that 10 spot by 3 games. But again, they're making it interesting. They've won 6 straight. They have covered in 5 of the 6, including 2 of those games, or 3 of those games, rather, as an underdog. Over in 5 of the last 7 for Houston. As we wrap things up around the association, we go to Dallas, where the Mavericks also playing really good basketball, laying 14 at home against a really banged-up Utah Jazz team. The over-under, 236. The Mavs actually under in 5 of 7, playing their best basketball. Totals working their way down, something to keep in mind. Our sports professor, Rick Horrow, is here. Your guess as good as ours. Next on the Early Line.
SportsGrid's going to have you covered for this NCAA tournament.
That's the movie that we know. When it's win or go home, they love to go home.
Tennessee's now in my phony club. They should all get together and drink green tea.
Furman's going to have a That is a team I'm betting on right now.
We are feeling this. You are feeling this at home. The excitement and the atmosphere.
Only on SportsGrid. The Bostonian versus the Book.
In the Big Ten, it's the same thing. No offense to you guys. This feels like the Penn State rule. This feels like
This is
the guaranteed Penn State to get in.
We need to find a way to let them in because they can't beat Michigan. They can't beat Ohio State. But if we make them a third,
they get in. This is
the
Penn
always
State
going to
rule.
be better than the West half.
Yep.
And that 1 year that Lightning in a Bottle catches on the West half, we'll let them in too because they'll bring people.
The Bostonian versus the Book.
The NC State game on Saturday against North Carolina that stood out most to me, that they not only went on a 5-day heater like they did in '83 when Valvano took them another 6 games and they won the national championship.
The committee didn't sit there at the beginning of the week and think that Oregon, New Mexico, NC State, Duquesne, they didn't sit there planning for all those teams to go and win.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid. SportsGrid, your 24/7 sports wagering network. Pro League Soccer, powered by Marca.
I would be willing to bet the under 2.5 goals.
Fantasy sports today.
Especially in head-to-head formats in fantasy, I think I'm going to go with Juan Soto.
Game time decisions.
People don't like it. I don't really care. I cannot believe anybody is betting the Clippers at this number.
Betting above the rim.
All I've heard you say on the network is you're either winning or you're rebuilding.
In-game live, all access.
Nobody has been more profitable as a dog than Shaka Smart team.
Winning back-to-back road games. I don't care if they're playing Topeka High. I wouldn't give them any chance whatsoever.
In-game live, prime time.
Back-to-back, just utterly stinker quarters.
In-game live, overtime.
Honestly, as you sit here and listen, watch right now, you may want to consider placing that bet.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
See, you hear him. You can hear him back there. Doesn't realize his mic is live. You know this is going to be fun for the next 10 minutes. Again, as we always say, your guess as good as ours. He is Donnie right side. I am Ben Stevens. And the man in the middle is our sports professor, Rick Horrow, very gracious to give us a couple of minutes on this Thursday morning. Round of 64 action, Rick Horrow, starts off the 2024 men's NCAA tournament on this Thursday, but you're more focused on Friday when you go to Memphis, Tennessee. Rick will be walking in Memphis for all 4 matchups in the round of 64 tomorrow.
I'm going to start singing unless you're careful. I'm not singing. So does everybody know where Longwood is? Longwood is in Farmville, Virginia. It is the next 16 to beat a 1. No chance. That doesn't work. But even though Houston loves to bang it up. So then Texas A&M, Nebraska. Then we got the Toothpaste Bowl. Colgate's in it in the afternoon, right? And then New Mexico. And then we got Baylor. Who's the 4th team? Who's the 8th team in the evening bracket? I forgot. But, it doesn't really matter. The bottom line is this is the day. It's all 8 regions with 8 games or 4 games and 8 teams apiece, starting basically midday, going to the end of the day. Incredible stuff. And it used to be Gallagher, Gray, and Christmas, the PR firm, put out the annual lost productivity survey about how much work is lost. Now that people are staying home and now that people are lying with better proclivity and better goods, the numbers doesn't matter. We don't even know how much lost productivity there is Thursday and Friday because there was none to begin with, by the way.
Right.
So,
you want to block off your work calendar from any meetings by any means so you can be focused on the big dance. Rick, we'll get into the betting implications of the NCAA tournament, what the handle looks like as compared to every other sporting event in the world, or at least here stateside. But speaking of betting, an interesting developing story yesterday surrounding one of the biggest stars in Major League Baseball for the LA Dodgers now, Shohei Ohtani. The Dodgers in Seoul, South Korea, in game number 2 of the Seoul series to open up this MLB campaign as we speak, yesterday rallied to a 5-2 victory over San Diego. That should have been the end of the story. Shohei Ohtani in his Dodgers debut in RBI that plated that 5th and final run for Los Angeles. Instead, after the game, all of the focus on Shohei Ohtani and his now former interpreter, Ippei Mizuhara, who was accused by Ohtani's representation of massive theft worth about $4.5 billion, all tied to a gambling habit in which Shohei Ohtani had to cover for him. The timeline interesting. The details of this story certainly stand out. Rick, in your immense knowledge, how do you wrap your head around all of these details?
I wrap my head around real good credibility that you pronounce that name without a hiccup. That's why they pay you the big bucks and you're a quintessential professional. But more important long term is this won't go away just because of the immense size of it and the fact that you probably can't distance yourself between your own interpreter, and it looks like they've got significant goods. So now it's not just spin control, but you got to get to the bottom of this. And Rob Manfred owes it to baseball to get to the bottom of this. If it's nothing, everybody ought to apologize. But yet we think it's probably more than nothing. As a lawyer, I'm not jumping to any conclusions yet other than to say this can be huge.
By the way, Rick, the interpreter's got to be hot right now. You take a look at this guy had a $4.5 million gambling debt, and now he doesn't even get it back in March Madness that starts today. Tough timing for the interpreter out there, because we're looking at an estimated $2.7 billion wagered here in the upcoming tournament. We love to gamble. It's legalized in most parts of the United States now. Also, Rick, take a look at how they get to this number and what is California doing out here where that interpreter was. Legalize it out there. Come on.
By the way, great segue, wrong side. That was really good. And good. You should see that. You should see that guy's brackets. I mean, that guy looks like he's destined for. By the way, nobody cares, but I will answer the question in a minute. My Final Four: Duke, North Carolina, Tennessee, and FAU. How about that? How about that pathetic Final Four? But if it happens, I'm coming to the studio and I'm going to jump all over you guys. First time in the history of gambling in North Carolina, by the way, where now we have more human beings living in states where gambling is legal than not. And we've crossed the Rubicon. And now this is everybody gleefully is going to lose some money equally, because by Sunday, everybody's brackets are going to be busted. And then we're going to see the next level of gambling and the next level of gambling. By the way, it is bigger than any other sporting event. As we know, North Carolina did it right. 18% of their money that they're starting to get this year is going to a sports development fund where Final Fours, new stadium renovations, Super Bowls, World Cup stuff, they're going to promote sports with some of the gambling money they've generated, which is great because gambling and sports creates the money. So why don't they spend it that way? A model for other states to look at.
I also just want to say and get this on the table right now that Rick Horrow will not be jumping on me or Donnie right side, just for what it is worth. And Rick, I was really, really hoping that when you gave out your Final Four, at least two of the teams would be in the same region. It seems as though you have studied the bracket pretty well. By the way, did anybody check out Donnie's lower third? The graphic under his name? Rick Horrow's nickname for Donnie Right Side is Wrong Side. And look at that. Rick Horrow making some impacts here on the early line. So, Rick, when you look at the NCAA tournament, that's very good. When you look at the NCAA tournament on the men's side and you think of the storylines of the handle, what is the number one thing you think emerges over this next 3-week run that is one of the best in the sports calendar?
Fan avidity and people who don't know anything about basketball being brought into a social event. You look at most brackets, and who knows what the percentage is, because nobody's going to answer a survey saying, are you a sports fan who's doing it because you like the team's colors or you really care? Nobody's going to answer that question. But when you look at families around the table and they're all picking brackets, nobody knows. Many people don't know. And even, experts really don't know what the results are going to be. You lose a little bit of money. You have camaraderie. It is the best social gathering mechanism in sports we have. Not the Super Bowl, because that's one day. This is a month of joy. Well, it's a week of joy. It's a month of misery when most people get blown out of their brackets. It used to be that by Sunday, you had as much chance of getting the brackets right as the old stat of getting hit by lightning in the desert with no rain. Now we have global warming, so that doesn't make any sense. But the bottom line is that people are still gathering around sports. That's my meteorological report, and that's my bracket report.
Yeah.
Gathering around sports here, which includes gathering around the television, something we didn't do in the past all that much with women's basketball, but the eyes are on the prize, Rick. Talk about the women's tournament and also what this could mean for the future of women's basketball and cashing tickets for them.
Wrong side again. Two for two. Dynamite segue. Well, here's the problem with the Caitlin Clark thing. Why did the NCAA put her in Iowa in the quadrant of death?
Tell them.
Here's what we're going to do. It's called hashtag change the pairings.
Oh, this is
change the brackets. Yes, it is. Everybody on one side clears the way, and whoever wins that one side plays Iowa in the finals. What do you think of that?
I love
How
that.
about that?
Donnie, as
We're
the
on the
future
same
commissioner of
We're on the
women's
same
college
team.
basketball, would
Yep.
probably enjoy that. Just so we know,
Yes.
though, Region 4 in Portland, also very difficult from the net rankings, but 1 through 6. Iowa's region, Albany region
tough.
2, very, very difficult. So many storylines, though. South Carolina looking to pull off the undefeated season. They enter 32-0. They're an odds-on favorite at -145. LSU looking to go back-to-back, tied for the second best number at 7-1. And, of course, Caitlin Clark and Iowa looking for a national championship, 7-1 as well. Rick, do you want to talk about the NIT before we go? Final 25 seconds, yours.
No, final 20 seconds yours because you filibustered for 5 of those seconds.
Yep.
NIT may or may not make it after a couple of years. Now the fashionable thing, by the way, just like top draft picks stepping out, they're stepping away. It's up to the NIT to regather. And if you want to know the future, come back after the break.
SportsGrid's going to have you covered for this NCAA tournament.
That's the review that we know. When it's win or go home, they love to go home. Tennessee's now in my phony club. They should all get together and drink green tea.
Furman's going to have a chance. That is a team I'm betting on right now.
We are feeling this. You are feeling this at home. The excitement and the atmosphere.
Only on SportsGrid. The Bostonian versus the Book.
In the Big Ten, it's the same thing. No offense to you guys. This feels like the Penn State rule. This feels like
This
is the guaranteed Penn State to get in.
We need to
Penn
find
State's
a way to let them in because they can't beat Michigan. They can't beat Ohio State. But
Right.
if we make them a third,
They get in.
This
is
they're
the Penn
always
State
gonna
rule.
be better than the West half.
Yep.
And that 1 year that Lightning in a Bottle catches on the West half, we'll let them in too because they'll bring people.
The Bostonian versus the Book.
The NC State game on Saturday against North Carolina that stood out most to me, that they not only went on a 5-day heater like they did in '83 when Valvano took them another 6 games and they won the national championship.
The committee didn't sit there at the beginning of the week and think that Oregon, New Mexico, NC State, Duquesne, they didn't sit there planning for all those teams to go and win.
Pharrell Coast to Coast. Only on SportsGrid. SportsGrid, your 24/7 sports wagering network. Pro League Soccer, powered by Marca.
I would be willing to bet the under 2.5 goals.
Fantasy sports today.
Especially in head-to-head formats and fantasy, I think I'm going to go with Juan Soto.
Game time decisions.
People don't like it. I don't really care. I cannot believe anybody is betting the Clippers at this number.
Betting above the
All
rim.
I've heard you say on the network is you're either winning or you're rebuilding.
In-game live all access.
Nobody has been more profitable as a dog than Shaka Smart team.
Winning back-to-back road games. I don't care if they're playing Topeka High. I wouldn't give them any chance whatsoever.
In-game live. Prime time.
Back-to-back, just utterly stinker quarters.
In-game live. Overtime.
Honestly, as you sit here and listen, watch right now, you may want to consider placing that bet.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
So after all of the malarkey of Rick Horrow, at least I can guarantee you now we get back to the handicaps on day number 1 of the round of 64, the 2024 Men's NCAA Tournament. I am Ben, he is Donnie, And now the man in the middle. For the next 2 straight segments, it is Joe Raineri, the hardest working man at the SportsGrid, live right here early on this Thursday on the early line. Joe, we appreciate the time. Look forward to breaking down some college basketball with you over these next 2 segments.
Gentlemen, let the madness begin here. Just a few short hours away, although we did have a couple of playing games, but nobody really cared about those. So let the madness begin here. Today, it is total debauchery for the next 72 hours or more. So let's dive in and cash a few tickets here, shall we?
So as we go through the madness that we will see truly ramp up and intensify today, we'll get into the games specifically for the round of 64 in our next segment. We'll fly through some of the marquee matchups on this Thursday. But now we go big picture to set the stage for the next 2.5 weeks and all the craziness that we are expecting to see. Joe, when you look at the NCAA tournament bracket, now it has dwindled to that 64-team field after the first 4 of the last 2 nights in Dayton, Ohio. When you look at the regions, which one stands out to you as the most difficult path, or you could take it the other way, the easiest run to a Final Four?
Well, I have a lot of future tickets on North Carolina. So I was not happy that the West was the destination for them in that bracket there, because that is a brutal bracket by many stretches here. I mean, North Carolina's trek now has to go through at least, we'd say, Arizona. But I do think there are a couple of teams in there that we can't sleep on, like St. Mary's, for instance. I think that's a team that's going to be a tough go-through for them here. Not to mention, if they get through that, then they got to go to, for Arizona. And we all know Arizona is the best team from a athletic standpoint, basketball. No, I mean, this team is just, the fact that they've lost the games that they have lost here is head-scratching. If they finally put it together, they're going to be tough to beat. I think Purdue on the other side pretty much cakewalk their way into a game against, on that side there where they can go Final Four, I think, rather easily. And Houston will have a hard time, but too many people are sleeping on Houston.
Joe, if we take a look at the season itself, right, you start to formulate your opinions January, February, heading into March here with the teams that you like. But always, once we see the bracket from Sunday night till the official start of the tournament for me on Thursday morning, did you have maybe a change of heart on a team or two? What are some of those teams that late, because we all have this, right? Your handicapping games go, whoa, I might have missed something here. Did you miss something with a team, or maybe one of those teams catching your attention here later in the week?
Well, you know what it is, Donnie, is I'm head scratching on a couple of teams that I just could not get right throughout the year. Like today, for instance, with Michigan State, could not get Michigan State right throughout the year, right? Every time I bet them, they lost. And I'm going, what is going on? Oregon was another team that I just could not wrap my head around, because I thought they were going to be much better than they were. But they finally showed up in the Pac-12 championship, Oregon did, and they looked like the team I thought they were going to be. Michigan State has far too many experienced players on this team. Would it shock me if Michigan State made a run now with Hagen and all these guys that they've got on his team that have been there, what seems like, for a decade? I would not be shocked. But I think the most important game for them is that game here today. They have to get this one here, and then they build off of that. Michigan State's going to be very, very dangerous.
A very slight favorite in the 8-9 matchup is the 9 seed in the West region, Michigan State. -122 money line, 1.5 in terms of the spread in the first game up of the round of 64 against Mississippi State. In the East region, Joe, we look at the reigning national champs and the number 1 overall seed. I think it's pretty clear to say the East region is a gauntlet and the most difficult path to a Final Four in this field now of 64. So when you look at UConn, trying to do something we haven't seen now in over 15 years, that is to go back-to-back as a national champ. Florida, the last to do so in 2006 and 2007. but the odds on UConn, pretty darn good. They enter as the national championship favorites, plus 370. The best price of any team in this field of 64 to reach the Final Four in Phoenix at plus 105. Joe, given UConn's path, the style of basketball, the level of basketball they are playing at this moment, do you think Connecticut will cash either of those two tickets that we just showed?
Yeah, I have UConn going to the Final Four. And as tough as that bracket may be, I think it's tough for everybody else. This team is on another level. They have consistently proven, and it's kind of been different this year, and we've talked about it throughout this season, right? We've had a lot more parity. We've had a lot more teams lose games that we never thought would lose. There was always right around this year 3 or 4 teams that kind of separated themselves, usually the 1 seeds or maybe a 2 seed. They just kind of separated themselves, and you're going, this team's on another level, right? We recognize that a lot of people recognized it late with UConn last year, but now, of course, this is a different story because everyone expected them to be good this year. And they are. I think UConn is the only team that has proven time and time again that they are a cut above everybody else. It is their bracket to lose. I've got them going to the Final Four. And then, of course, they're too cheap a price to be doing anything in a future market. But considering a possible money line rollover each game throughout the process is not a bad idea because they will be the toughest out for anybody they play.
I used to go chalk in my brackets here, getting into the Elite Eight and also into the Final Four. Didn't do it so much this year, Joe. On the FanDuel Sportsbook, they give you the opportunity to bet on those number 1 seeds. For my bracket, Joe, I have 1 number 1 seed advancing into the Final Four. But those betting markets, if you think 0 will get to the Final Four in those top seeds, it's a plus 330 price, all the way down to if you think 4 teams will get there at a 41-1 price. In your brackets, Joe, who are you lining up in the Final Four? Multiple 1 seeds, none, or all of them?
Well, ironically enough, when we talked about it, I think the approach to brackets is you have to be careful because I think 35%, 40% of the brackets are going to have UConn winning it all, right? Mm-hmm. So, and if it ain't UConn, it's going to be some combination of Arizona or Tennessee, or I think if you want to kind of separate yourself, then the game to separate yourself with is having a couple of brackets showing that Auburn beats UConn and then eventually makes it down to the Final Four or the championship. I think that's the side of the bracket in which you can kind of separate yourself in any of these bracket challenges. Consider the Texas Tech's going as further, St. Mary's going further against North Carolina, so on and so forth. Ironically enough, nobody is talking about Houston. And a lot of people, based upon what they just saw last from them, which is an absolute shellacking by Iowa State, I don't know that I'd be sleeping on Houston just yet. But if you're going to separate yourself, you need to figure out maybe an Auburn, maybe a Baylor, maybe from somebody on that side of the bracket kind of throws a wrench into your plans.
Only one time in the history of the NCAA tournament have we seen all 4 number 1 seeds into the Final Four. That was 2008. In fact, the last time we saw all 4 even reach the Elite Eight was 2016. Last year was chaos like we had never seen. No 1 seed into the Elite Eight for the first time ever. We did not see a 1, 2, or 3 seed into the Final Four for the first time in the history of the Big Dance. Now we look at some of those Cinderellas that might be able to make a run. The worst seed, the lowest seed to reach the final, or to make the Sweet 16 rather, on the FanDuel Sportsbook. We have 9 through 14. I would also like to add a 15 seed. It's the same price as the 9 at 18-1 because 3 consecutive NCAA tournaments we have seen a 15 seed reach the Sweet 16. Joe, as you look up and down the bracket, you correlate it to these odds. Which seed line do you think makes that deep run into the second weekend?
I wouldn't recency bias here, Ben. There's going to be an awful lot of people I remember last year and think we're going to get 11 seeds and, we're going to get all of these big. I would be extremely careful with expecting that we're going to get all of these crazy upsets here. It doesn't happen every year. Last year was an anomaly with FAU and, heck, even San Diego State, right? They might have been seated a little bit too low to begin with. But I do think I wouldn't go much further than 9. Maybe a 9 seed that you would take a look at here that could actually make a run, and one team that I would not sleep on if you really want to make a few bucks there is TCU. TCU has the style, they have the coach, they have the physicality, they have the speed. They're taking on Utah State, an 8 seed. I think TCU, plenty of value with them, maybe to upset the apple cart here with Jamie Dixon's crew here. If they can make some shots from the outside, I think they could be a team that, yes, we'll come back here in a week from now and wonder how in the hell did they make it to the Sweet 16.
The 11 seeds intrigue me. We have seen 5 11 seeds in the history of the Big Dance reach the Final Four. Most recently, it was UCLA from the first 4 to the Final Four in 2021. And speaking of the first 4, we'll show you these odds. All the special markets out there on the FanDuel Sportsbook. Odds for any first 4 team. That would be Wagner, Grambling, Colorado, and Colorado State to reach the Sweet 16, Elite 8, and beyond. 11 of the 12 years of the first 4, a team that was victorious in Dayton wins at least one more game in the round of 64. 5 of the 12 years, we have seen a first 4 team win multiple games. That would be Sweet 16 at plus 180. Round of 64 Thursday handicaps with Raineri up next.
SportsGrid's going to have you covered for this NCAA tournament.
That's the that we know. When it's win or go home, they love to go home. Tennessee's now in my phony club. They should all get together and drink green tea.
Furman's going to have a chance. That is a team I'm betting on right now.
We are feeling this. You are feeling this at home. The excitement and the atmosphere.
Only on SportsGrid. The Bostonian versus the Book.
In the Big Ten, it's the same thing. No offense to you guys. This feels like the Penn State rule. This feels like this is the guaranteed Penn State to get in.
We need to find a way to let them in because they can't beat Michigan. They can't beat Ohio State. But if we make them a third,
they get in.
Third,
this is the Penn State rule.
Be better than the West half.
Yep.
That 1 year that Lightning in a Bottle catches on the West half, we'll let them in too because they'll bring people.
The Bostonian versus the Book.
The NC State game on Saturday against North Carolina that stood out most to me, that they not only went on a 5-day heater like they did in '83 when Valvano took them another 6 games and they won the national championship.
The committee didn't sit there at the beginning of the week and think that Oregon, New Mexico, NC State, Duquesne, they didn't sit there planning for all those teams to go and win.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid. SportsGrid, your 24/7 sports wagering network. Pro League Soccer, powered by Marca.
I would be willing to bet the under 2.5 goals.
Fantasy sports today.
Especially in head-to-head formats in fantasy, I think I'm going to go with Juan Soto.
Game time decisions.
People don't like it. I don't really care. I cannot believe anybody is betting the Clippers at this number.
Betting above the
All
rim.
I've heard you say on the network is you're either winning or you're rebuilding.
In-game live, all access.
Nobody has been more profitable as a dog than Shaka Smart team.
Winning back-to-back road games. I don't care if they're playing Topeka High. I wouldn't give them any chance whatsoever.
In-game live, prime time.
Back-to-back, just utterly stinker quarters.
In-game live, overtime.
Honestly, as you sit here and listen, watch right now, you may want to consider placing that bet.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
My promise to you on this round of 64 Thursday for the 2024 Men's NCAA Tournament has and remains that we will preview all 16 matchups that we have on the first full day of the big dance. We've already run through 3. In these next 2 hours, about an hour and a half left in the show, we'll get to the final 13. Breakdowns, picks, and previews. We go through 5 with some pace here as well. You could think of it as a top 25 adjusted tempo on KenPom with myself, Joe, and Donnie. So, Raineri, we start with a really intriguing matchup between maybe the hottest team entering the big dance. That would be NC State. 5 wins in 5 days in D.C. in the ACC tournament to steal a bid and earn an automatic berth to the big dance. It's the 11-6 matchup in that South region against Grant McCaslin and Texas Tech. His first year in Lubbock, the Red Raiders have gone dancing once again. Line opened at 5.5. It's worked in favor of the Wolfpack. Now a 4.5 number between the Red Raiders and NC State. How do you break down this round of 64 matchup on a Thursday?
Yeah, so, I mean, to win 5 games in 5 days in the ACC championship, by the way, the last 3 as an underdog in that run there, which is kind of crazy to actually win the tournament. The problem is, if we look back in that kind of situation, it doesn't bode well for those teams coming into the tournament. It's actually 1956-3 against the number in the round of 64. I mean, listen, Texas Tech, I thought had a great season here. I thought maybe that they overperformed a little bit. I think them and a team like South Carolina had better seasons than most thought. But I'm talking about a Texas Tech team that is, to me, with Grant McCaslin, I believe the best conference in college basketball. So the level of competition that they had to go up with, I am more impressed with what Texas Tech has been able to do than this nice little run and a great story for NC State. But the reality is NC State shouldn't even be here if they hadn't done the improbable. I don't think that improbable continues. The only way I would look is Texas Tech in this one.
Great matchup today from Pittsburgh, 4 p.m. Eastern start. That's Oregon and South Carolina, Pac-12 team versus an SEC opponent. We're taking a look at the opening number at the FanDuel Sportsbook. I actually had South Carolina as a minus 1.5 point favorite. That has now swung over to Oregon, who holds a slight minus 1.5 favorite. If we're looking at some of those KenPom numbers or just take a look at their season, these teams match up really well with each other, Joe. Any looks in this game where you think one of the sides has a decisive advantage here between Oregon and South Carolina?
I mean, here we go, right? Oregon was the death of me this year every time I bet them, until, of course, the Pac-12 championship when they finally figure it out and put it together. But the reality is Dana Altman has this tendency while at Oregon to have his teams playing their best, not in December, not in January, not in February. You know when? They play their best in March. 45-24-1 against the number in all postseason games at Oregon under Altman, including 27-9 against the number if he's had a couple of days rest. This guy is a cover machine at Oregon, not because they've had great teams, but because they've played their best basketball heading into the tournament. That is what we have. The thing that scares me here is that you've got South Carolina coming off a 31-point blowout to Auburn. Teams usually like that, they get absolutely smoked in the tournament game, their conference tournament game, who come into the tournament with that taste in their mouth, tend to perform pretty well. I think it's lined right. I think it's a coin flip game. If I had to bet it, I'm not going against Dana Altman and Oregon and as 11 seed. That might be your upset of the day here.
14 total wins, by the way, for South Carolina in the SEC. They were picked dead last in the conference under Lamont Paris, and they have turned things around. But in those 14 SEC wins, they covered in 13 of them. 12 came as a dog. A lot of people are looking at a streaky Oregon team to continue what they did in the Pac-12 tournament here in the NCAA tournament. I don't know if it's as easy as many people are expecting. And currently right now, the Gamecocks are the underdog, one of the 10 slowest tempos in college basketball. That can frustrate. But one of the keys for the Ducks in these improbable runs that Dana Altman leads his Oregon teams on in Eugene 3 times now in the last 11 years, by the way. Dana Altman, when his team was not in consideration for an at-large bid, they have won the Pac-12 title to get that automatic berth to the big dance. And Foley Dante, their big man down low, is back. He is healthy, and he is a gamer. That game, a virtual pick'em, 9 cents of difference on the money line. Pretty similar story for a matchup between the 7 and 10 in the West region. That would be Dayton and Nevada. Dayton, despite being the higher-seeded team, is actually the short underdog. The Flyers, minus 104. Disappointing in the A-10 tournament, but still secured an at-large bid, going up against the Nevada team out of the Mountain West. Joe, it's a pick'em. Who wins?
It is a pick'em, and these two teams are, spot on here. They're evenly matched as it comes. Great guard play, right? They've got guys that can shoot. Listen, Nevada was not a great three-point shooting team, but seemed somehow to be able to hit them when they needed a bucket here. But it's all about the guards with these two teams here, which is what makes this so evenly matched here. I will say this, if you're looking for an edge, you've got this game's in Salt Lake City. It's in altitude, guys. And listen, Nevada and Reno used to playing games in altitude. You know who has not played one game in altitude this year? Dayton. So I would be very interested to see how that's going to work towards the second half here. I think it's a toss-up kind of game here. I wouldn't be shocked if Nevada won and won it maybe going away, but you can't sleep on Dayton because of the guards that they have there. But my goodness, let's see how they roll in the second half of a close game in altitude.
Colorado State getting that slingshot effect here, winning a game in the first 4. Now they're going to take on Texas, and we're looking at another close line as well. The FanDuel Sportsbook opening this number at 2.5, and still today it sits at 2.5 as a favorite towards the Texas Longhorns. A total that opened up at 144.5, now down to 143.5. You take a look at that Mountain West. It's got a lot of teams in, but not a lot of great seeds here. Texas, for me, down in the Big 12, I think is the best overall conference as you take a look at it. But if we're lining this game up, do you agree that momentum might play a little bit of a factor for Colorado State here, Joe?
It might actually. I mean, listen, there is no more head-scratching than what we got from Texas this year. Can you please tell me what Texas team shows up here? I have no idea. We know with Max Asmus and company, this team is not short on talent. They're not short on shooters, right? I think Terry had his moments here this year coaching this team. But my good, Nico Medved he is proven to be time and time again this year one of the most underrated coaches in college basketball here. They kind of faded a little bit. Do you remember how good the Colorado State team was early on? Had a lot of people talking about him. Isaiah Stevens is an absolute bulldog. He is a guy that can take over games here. I think Texas is going to have their hands full. I think a lot of people are just seeing Texas and being like, all right, let's go with them. But, to your point earlier, Ben, some of these teams that come in having won a play-in game, and they roll that into another win here in the first round. This is the one game would not shock me if Colorado State upends number 7 Texas.
I have Colorado State. I had them winning in the first 4 against Virginia, and I thought that if CSU accomplished that, which they did, they would knock off Texas. I'm surprised to see Texas on the 7 line. We've talked a lot about the Big 12 booing up the resumes of their conference members and what it means metrically. I think Texas takes advantage of that. They're a 9-9 basketball team in the Big 12. Now, a healthy Dylan DeSue, their versatile big man, and he is getting healthier, changes things for a very talented Longhorns team. But I believe in Nico Medved, and I believe in Colorado State. Oh, by the way, in the 25-point blowout over Virginia, sure, a lot of that is the Cavaliers being atrocious offensively. Isaiah Stevens, though, is the best player for the Rams and he scored only 5 points. It was Nick Clifford really leading the way for Colorado State on Tuesday night in Dayton. A 2.5-point spread in favor of Texas. I would not be shocked to see the Rams win outright in that 7-10 matchup in the Midwest region. The final game of the night tips off just a little bit after 10 p.m. Eastern time in Omaha, Nebraska. And we've looked at a lot of the games that have very short numbers, 1.5, 2.5, pretty close in terms of the money line as well. Same exact story for this matchup. Drake and Washington State, the 7-10 split in the East region. The Bulldogs, the champions of the Missouri Valley. Washington State into the big dance for the first time since 2008. Kyle Smith, a great job this year up on the Palouse. When this bracket was revealed on Selection Sunday, Wazoo opened as a slight favorite. Now they enter as a slight underdog. Joe, will this game be as close and competitive as those numbers indicate?
Yeah, I think it will, but I think Washington State is being totally disrespected here by the part of the market that just falls in love with Drake every year. Like, oh, Drake, the Bulldogs, they're everyone's favorite. Yeah, well, they were everyone's favorite last year, and they got bounced rather quickly too, didn't they? So I would listen. And no, I'm not doubting. Drake had a fantastic season, 28-6. They went 3-1 against teams rated in the top 50. Great season, nice mid-major program, but we're talking about a Washington State team, I think, that's not getting enough credit here coming out of the Pac-12. They, too, also had a winning record against top 50 teams, too, going 5-4, including not one, but 2 wins over the number 2 seed Arizona in that bracket there. I just think, listen, Washington State, I think we're underestimating them. I think we just assume that Drake, the mid-major, as impressive as it was, is going to go ahead and get it done. I'm not. I think that Washington State here is absolutely the value as getting points. I don't know why we're just penciling Drake in here, but not me. I'm going Washington State here. I think Washington State will sneak up on some teams this season here. If this tournament of teams are not, it's going to start with Drake, and then who knows what Washington State do as the Pac-12 champ after that.
Betting the regular season, Joe, obviously a little bit different than March Madness here. Some rules that some handicappers have, and I always like to pick the brains here. For me, I hate the lay points in March Madness. I usually like to take it. If it's a close number, I'll take the money line on the favorite just to win that basketball game. Are there any rules you stick to from the regular season that you might change up for March Madness?
Yeah, I mean, listen, it doesn't either way, right, Donnie? Because if it's that much of a pick-em kind of game, I'll usually side with taking the points. It's okay. I mean, if it's going to come down to the second half and who's got the ball last, it's called madness for a reason. I would much rather in an evenly matched game have points or plus money as opposed to not having them.
5 of the 16 matchups that we have on this opening day of the round of 64 feature a 2.5-point spread or shorter. We are expecting competition. We'll continue to preview all the games that you will see in the round of 64 in our third and final hour. But before we do that, a sincere thank you, Joe Raineri, for setting the stage for the big dance and your thoughts on this opening Thursday as well. Enjoy all the games, and I hope all your bets hit.
Yeah, well, if they do, I will not be here tomorrow with you, Ben. I can tell you that right now. So let's hope I lose 1 or 2 so I can actually show up tomorrow.
I would welcome that. I'll take on a one-man show if that's the case. We get down this second hour next.
SportsGrid's going to have you covered for this NCAA tournament.
That's the movie that we know. When it's win or go home, they love to go home. Tennessee's now in my phony club. They should all get together and drink green tea.
Furman's going to have a chance. That is a team I'm betting on right now.
We are feeling this. You are feeling this at home. The excitement and the atmosphere.
Only on SportsGrid. The Bostonian versus the book.
In the Big Ten, it's the same thing. No offense to you guys. This feels like the Penn State rule. This feels like this is the guaranteed Penn State to get in.
We need to find a way to let them in because they can't beat Michigan. They can't beat Ohio State. But if we make them a third,
they get in.
Third,
this is the Penn
always
State
going to
rule.
be better than the West half.
Yep.
That 1 year that Lightning in a Bottle catches on the West half, we'll let them in too because they'll bring people.
The Bostonian versus the book.
The NC State game on Saturday against North Carolina that stood out most to me, that they not only went on a 5-day heater like they did in '83 when Valvano took them another 6 games and they won the national championship.
The committee didn't sit there at the beginning of the week and think that Oregon, New Mexico, NC State, Duquesne, they didn't sit there planning for all those teams to go and win.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid. SportsGrid, your 24/7 sports wagering network. Pro League Soccer, powered by Marca.
I would be willing to bet the under 2.5 goals.
Fantasy sports today.
Especially in head-to-head formats and fantasy, I think I'm going to go with Juan Soto.
Game time decisions.
People don't like it. I don't really care. I cannot believe anybody is betting the Clippers at this number.
Betting above the
All
rim.
I've heard you say on the network is you're either winning or you're rebuilding.
In-game live all access.
Nobody has been more profitable as a dog than Shaka Smarty.
Winning back-to-back road games. I don't care if they're playing Topeka High. I wouldn't give them any chance whatsoever.
In-game live, prime time.
Back-to-back, just utterly stinker quarters.
In-game live, overtime.
Honestly, as you sit here and listen, watch right now, you may want to consider placing that bet.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Rounding out this second hour live right here on the Round of 64 Thursday, live on the early line on SportsGrid. He is Donnie Rightside. I am Ben Stevens. We will continue to paint the path in a march through the madness into our third and final hour. We will handicap every game here, all 16 that we have on this opening day of the Round of 64 at the Big Dance. But we wanted to hear from you. We've given you our national championship picks. We'll go through them once again. We'll talk about Final Four contenders, all of that in our third and final hour. But who do you, the people out there, have cutting down the nets in just 2.5 weeks on a Monday night in Phoenix, Arizona? That was the question in Fade the Public. At SportsGrid TV on Twitter, who wins the 2024 men's NCAA Tournament? UConn, the reigning champs, the favorites to make it 2 straight, plus 370. Houston, plus 550, second best price. Second team on that one line, the top team in the South region. Or can Purdue define its season now in March? Looking to win the Big Ten's first title since the year 2000. The Boilermakers just trying to reach the Final Four for the first time since 1980 in more than 4 decades. Or if it was other, you must reply. We've got a bunch of replies here on this Round of 64 Thursday morning. UConn at right now, DRS, leads the Fade the Public poll, nearly 37%. But other, 33%. We heard from JFC, Kentucky, Sean Howe, Arizona, our VP of social media and proud Carolina alum, Rebecca Harrelson. She likes North Carolina. Donnie does not. We got a lot of action in this Fade the Public poll, Donnie.
Yeah, we do. And it does make some sense that UConn is going to be the leader in the clubhouse, close to 37%. But I do want to shout out the NCAA for making it as hard as possible for UConn to actually get to the Final Four, which opens up so many other opportunities that we're certainly going to talk about here coming up in hour number 3. Good poll today. I'll let you know what my decision is after the break. It's a nice little teaser here. That's being professional, man. It's being a pro.
When Donnie likes a poll, that's how you know the day is going to be good. Hour 3 starts in 55 seconds. Hey.
smarter to be on SportsGrid.